the founder of Tinder went to
Mm,
USC and a lot of others. And so it seemed like a natural path for me to follow my dreams.
right.
But what was on the other side was when I graduated, I couldn't really land a job that I liked.
Mm,
So I was either overqualified for a job or underqualified for a job.
right.
And so typically when I apply to a job and now I look back and I have more empathy for the recruiters.
Welcome to You're the Boss podcast show. And today I have a guest with me, Jermaine E. And Jermaine, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ange.
Okay, you're welcome. So just let me know, or just let our listeners know, first of all, what we should know about you, first of all, about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I am coming to you live from California. I'm in a small town here called Pasadena. It's right outside of
Nice,
Los Angeles.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and I am born to a family of Malaysian Chinese. So my parents were the ones who moved to the United States in the late 70s, early 80s. And, my journey is a true American immigrant story. So my parents started out with nothing and got their MBAs and worked their way up so that I can have this privileged life that I have thinking about businesses and traveling the world, checking off bucket lists.
Lovely, lovely. So as you know, I'm currently based in Singapore, so it's very close to Malaysia. And so were you actually born in Malaysia or were you born in the US?
I was born in the US.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice, 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 nice. So you arrived or your parents arrived in the US. They set up like the American dream kind of thing, right? And that all became successful. So you had a good role model early on for business, I guess.
Yeah, I think the lesson that I got out of watching my parents is that it isn't always a straight line, right? It's
Mm.
ups and
Yeah.
downs and coming
That's
back. Yeah, yeah. And if you're lucky, you'll see a through line when you look back once in a while. But for the most part, it really is just keeping your head down and trying to do your best every day.
Yeah,
So
I think that's
that's what I
that's a
learned
good
from them.
yeah, and that's a good point you make, I think, in terms of things can look chaotic or you can't see necessarily where you're heading towards sometimes, but then you look back and you can connect the dots. It's kind of that speech that it was Steve Jobs made, right? About connecting the dots when you look back. So I
Yeah.
think that's very true. As you said, you can see a through line, you can see a pattern as to what you're doing and why. So
Yeah.
tell us about your journey. So I know that you started very young in entrepreneurship. So am I right to say you've always been in entrepreneurship? Or have you ever had a quote unquote proper job?
I think the term entrepreneurship got very popular in the last 15 years.
Mm.
I think before that it was just people starting businesses. We don't really look at someone who's starting business and think, "Oh, that's an entrepreneur." So, yeah, my first indication that I will set out this path that I'm on right now is when I was maybe around 12 years old and I used to record this cassette tapes and download what was playing on the radio and make a mixtape out of it and I would sell it in school and get into trouble for it. And so yeah, for that reason I think I've always been an entrepreneur whether knew it or not.
Right. Yeah, that's so funny. It's like school those days, especially, was just not set up to help people to actually start their own businesses. And this is a skill set that I think schools should teach, really. And to feel that you were punished for actually being an entrepreneur, learning how to make money and stuff. So that was your first, right? So you started that in school, but then how did that develop afterwards?
Yeah, I actually spent about a decade in Malaysia when I was younger, so that's the reason why I can speak Mandarin and I can understand some Malay
Yeah,
and some Bahasa. And
yeah.
I moved back to the US when I was 15 and I started in high school feeling very behind because I didn't grow up in the American school system. I had what Singapore has, which is like a Commonwealth school system that is
Hmm.
more British. And yeah, it was a struggle in the beginning, but I made my way through and I went to USC Southern California, here in LA. And I went to USC at a time where entrepreneurship became very trendy. And a lot of my classmates started businesses, mostly in tech. And, some of my classmates went on to do really big things. We have gaming companies that came out of USC the years that I was there.
Right.
The founder of Tinder went to
Mhm.
USC and a lot of others. And so it seemed like a natural path for me to follow my dream.
Right.
But what was on the other side was when I graduated, I couldn't really land a job that I liked. So I was either overqualified for a job or underqualified for a job. And so typically when I apply to a job and now I look back and I have more empathy for the recruiters. But at the time I didn't understand why. I had a good degree, I had a good background and I speak all these languages and I couldn't land a job because I was a high risk candidate. I was a
Okay.
candidate that was either too qualified that the
Yeah.
recruiter didn't think I would stay, or I was underqualified where, I was maybe extending too much on my skill set.
So this is a good point, I think, for people to consider or keep in mind is, if you're going through the job market, looking back now, what could you have done differently when applying for those jobs to put the recruiters at ease?
Well, if you really, really wanted the job, I would read carefully the job description, because if you kind of think about a recruiter's job, they're not the owner. They're typically not even senior management. And their job is dependent on their ability to hire X amount of people based on the description that was given
Mm.
to them. And
Yeah.
so you want to de-risk their job. You want to present yourself in a way that helps them check off the boxes on their scorecard so that if you didn't work out, the recruiter can say, well, they checked off everything on the scorecard that you gave me. You're de-risking their job so that there's an opportunity for you to get in there.
Right. Okay. All right. So, okay, that's a good insight. And I think also this came up yesterday for me actually because I put a job on LinkedIn for my company and I got loads of applications in. And then a message popped up on my WhatsApp where this girl said, I've applied for a job through LinkedIn. I just wanted to let you know that I'm here and I really want to work with you. And I was like, oh, okay, right. She stood out because she went the extra mile. And instead of just waiting to be picked out of the hundreds that applied, she actually presented herself and she actually took the time to look for my contact and contact me directly. And so I thought that was it showed initiative, right? And then the conversation we had after that was, yeah, I really want to work with you. So that it's that kind of, as you say, de-risking, that feeling of, okay, there's something in there that could be beneficial to both parties. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened next for you? So you couldn't get a
So
job.
right around when I graduated university, this app called Snapchat got very popular. And I remember it was 2012 and I visited Southeast Asia. I was in Bangkok, I was in KL, I was in Singapore, and nobody was using Snapchat at the time because it was just so new. And because
Yeah.
Snapchat was from Venice Beach here in LA,
Okay.
all my
Didn't know
friends
that.
used it. Yeah. And
Okay.
so I ended up starting a company that would become an agency model to help businesses create a geofence Snapchat filter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, looking back now, it sounds simple, but back in 2012, 13, 14, this was a time where, you know, businesses are still trying to figure out how does the social media world interact with the physical brick and mortar world.
Right.
And so the ability to install a filter to make snaps now branded content
Mm-hmm.
was kind of crazy, looking back. And so that's what I started doing. And yeah, we ran it like an agency. So we built a list of clients. We went out, did a lot of RFPs. And oftentimes I was trying to convince businesses to try a tech that wasn't proven yet.
Mm.
But we knew there was something there because nobody else was doing it. So the
Mm-hmm.
attention was higher. The
Right.
attention per dollar was kind of an arbitrage.
Right. Okay. So in that kind of sense, that what drives you? What makes you go out and push for something that you believe in?
In the beginning, it was definitely the need of this validation. You know, I think watching a lot of my friends, at least from the outside, climbing this success ladder, I think a lot of times in my 20s, I thought, well, if I'm successful, it would solve all the problems I have in the world. And now looking back, it's not completely true. There's a lot of things that needed to be solved from the inside,
Yes,
but
it's usually the way.
it drove me to go to places and work as hard as possible. And in the beginning, when I first started my first company, I didn't have the money to just be a full-time founder, and we hadn't raised any money. And so I was driving for Uber for
Mm,
about 4 years on and off. And I think the stats in total was a total of 4,000 plus rides.
okay.
So that was a lot of rides between
Yeah.
5 a.m. and 10 a.m. when the
Oh,
prices were peaked. So,
okay. Right.
so I
Nice.
went through this path of just scraping by and
Mm.
trying to find anything that can make money.
Well, this is it. Always I say, like I have a saying that you do whatever it takes, right? You do, and that's what you did. You did what it took to get by, and do the things that other people won't necessarily want to do. You're working extra hours and stuff, and it pays off in the end, right? Or it did for
Hopefully.
you. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oftentimes it does.
Yeah.
The beauty of business is that if you don't quit, you cannot lose.
Yeah. You only lose when you quit. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's very true. Very true. Okay. So after that agency, or is that still going, or that's changed now, I
It
guess, because the
actually kept
technology
going
changed.
until a few years ago. My
Okay.
business partner he ran with it, and
Right.
he built a life for himself.
Okay. Nice. And were you still a part of it in terms of
I wasn't.
investment?
So in 2016, Donald Trump became president, and I thought there was a gap of empathy in the US or around me. And I remember clearly one day sitting next to two friends who were both in their 50s or early 60s. And one of them is from Alabama and one of them's from Seattle. So for the international audience, Alabama is fairly conservative, Seattle's very liberal. And we were sitting at this breakfast table and I was hearing them talk and I realized they're not hearing each other, right? This
Oh,
is
okay.
the lack of ability to just understand and try to hear each other's point of view was missing. And I thought to myself at some point that, the business was going fine. It wasn't going great. We were making a living, but it wasn't a rocket ship. And so I thought, I don't want to spend the next few years scraping by selling Snapchat ads. I wanted to do something more meaningful. So I went into politics. I cold emailed my way into a job with the then treasurer of California. And so that was my journey into understanding a little bit more about how the world worked. So, just a little bit of context, right? California was the sixth largest economy in the world at the time, and the
In the
treasurer's
world.
job is in the world.
Okay.
So, there's
Wow. Okay.
only a few countries that had an economy larger than California's.
Wow. Okay.
This is based on GDP, import, export, and things like that, consumption. And the treasurer's job is the state's banker. His job is to take the state's income and invest it to grow. And I thought, well, that's kind of a cool job, and that's a great way for me to understand how things worked. And then he was running for governor, and so I got to see how politics worked behind the scenes.
Mm.
And for a year and a half, I did that, and it was one of the most rewarding year and a half of my life.
So in what way was it rewarding?
Well, in many ways. So one of the ones that come to mind immediately is I got to sit in rooms with very successful people who are making decisions that affects millions of people. And just to be a fly in the wall and see how things are done, that's incredible.
So what would you say you've learned from that experience? And have you been able to take it into your businesses?
Yes, I have become more jaded. I have become become more realistic about what change is possible. When you talk to younger folks who have this beautiful view of the world of
Uh-huh.
peace is possible, and I want to work for the UN, I want to go be a public defendant to help people who cannot defend themselves. It is great. It is great
Mhm.
that somebody has that dream, but in reality, the world doesn't quite work that way. The leverage doesn't come from having hours put into the United Nations. And they do good work, in different departments, I think. Especially these days, right? We're in a time where the the way the world has been functioning since World War II is being challenged. Things are
Yeah.
shifting,
Yeah.
and we're seeing a lot of things that have worked in the past 60 years kind of been challenged. So yeah, it got me to look at the world in a very different way, and in some ways, it carried over to show me that everything that we see around us is made up by people who are no smarter than we are.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
they
think we
came a
tend
little bit
to
before
put
we did.
yeah, I think we tend to put, especially my generation, I think we tended to put people on pedestals, right? And you tend to think, oh, there's something special about them. But then realizing, they say like never meet your heroes, right? Because they'll just destroy your perception of who they are. Because yeah, everyone is human and nobody is better than anybody else. So I think, yeah, that's a good insight to have.
And on the other side too, it is inspiring to see, some of the people who are making the changes in the world, who are
Yeah,
genuinely there's this unfortunate negativity around, let's say, billionaires. Like, oh, billionaires must be evil. But I've met many billionaires who are just laser focused on building something that they believe can benefit the
yeah,
world. And they happen to be in a field where it made a lot of money, at least on paper. A
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of
The
billionaires
papers
are
are
paper wealth.
yeah, yes. Yeah, I think that's certainly true as well. It's like people have a perception sometimes of rich people are evil, as you said, but it's not, or money's evil. And even it's not true. It's what you do with it. And I look at it as the more money you make, the more money you can give as well. You can't help somebody if you can't help yourself. So it is an altruistic thing as well at the end of the day.
Yeah, money can be used in so many ways. I think most of Western society and even the Eastern Asian societies, fairly materialistic societies, money is often used as a tool of measurement, right? It's like, do I have more? Do you have more? And how do we measure someone's self worth? But money can also be a great tool to take care of the people you love and to live a better life, to live
Yeah.
a fuller life.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned a little bit earlier that you thought that if you got XYZ, you met your goals, you would be happy. Everything would be solved. But that's not always true, right? Money will solve certain things. It's not going to solve everything. So what did you discover around that aspect, that things that it didn't solve, perhaps?
Yeah, I've always been a very grateful person. Every Sunday I sit down and I journal on the things that I'm grateful for. And for all these years that I've had this journaling practice, I've always been grateful for the health of the people I love, as well as the togetherness that we have, that we're very close. And around 6 months, actually 6 months ago today of this recording, I woke up and realized that I had a problem money cannot solve, which is my mom was on her deathbed, and that I would trade everything for it.
Mm,
You know, and
yeah.
and I think sometimes we live in a society where we kind of go on autopilot because we're too consumed by what it means to be successful in our surrounding that we don't really question ourselves. Like, why do we need a nicer phone or a nicer car and all these things that we keep chasing?
Yeah.
And it is unfortunate that typically it's in situations where there's a loss of a loved ones is when we think about things like that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
It gives you a new perspective on life and why you're doing what you're doing. I think the pandemic did that as well for people. It's like you're suddenly hit by something that makes you kind of wake up, right? And some kind of life event where you then need to look at things differently and then question what you've always done. And we tend to, I think, operate a lot of times in a hypnotic trance in a way. You don't really realize what you're doing every day. You're just on autopilot and you don't really think about. I mean, it's the same for me when I was running my business, my copywriting business, and I had no plans for it really. I grew it by accident, right? And it grew. And then suddenly one day I just thought, what am I doing? What am I doing? I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. This is too stressful. I need to find a different way to do this. Luckily, technology had just reached the stage where you could work remotely, right? And I just took things back to working from home. I just wanted to work from home. That's all I wanted to do, really. So it's just that realization that sometimes life takes you on a path and sometimes you need to get back on course, right? So what's your plan?
Yeah, during COVID, I was the CEO of a startup in New York, an education tech startup. And we had 5 physical locations that we had to get out of because our business model was seats in table in the physical location. That's our
Right.
revenue. And so with COVID, we couldn't do any of that. So it gave me a lot of time at home to think about what I wanted to do. And what came out of it on the other end after some exploring was I realized I just wanted to spend more time with my family. And so we actually got a WeWork office and we had an office right across from each other. And
Okay.
and so during the day when we're in the same city, we'd go to work and then we would have lunch together and then we go back to work and then we'll just go to the gym together. And I think, it made me rethink this chart that I saw during COVID by this author named Sahil Bloom. He
Mhm.
visualized, the time we spend with people on
Mm,
a chart. And what it
mm.
shows is most of us would have spent 90% of the time we have with our parents by time we're 20 years old.
Right.
And by time
Okay.
we're 30, it's 95%.
Wow.
And so if you're listening to this and you're now kind of thinking about this fact, right? 95% of time that you would have spent with a parent or a child, the other way around, would have been done by 30 years old. Then I would say why not take a look at this 95% and write down the things that you really enjoyed that brought you so much joy and so much good memories and do more of that, right? With the
Mm,
last 5% you have left, why not do
okay.
more of that? Right. So that's
Right.
the realization that I had during COVID.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think COVID made people really put things in perspective, right? So how did Airlight come about, your present adventure?
Yeah, it came from an insight that I had. The insight was that most people fear retirement, not because the lack of resources, but because of a lack of clarity. So I'll explain that. One day, my parents and I were having lunch at a Thai restaurant right outside of our office, and this topic of retirement came up. And I asked them, when do you want to retire? And my mom, they both have saved all their lives and, they wanted to make sure they can take care not only of themselves, but also of the people that they love, the 4 kids. And and when it came to the topic of retirement, I realized my mom didn't have clarity as to how much she had accumulated. And so, I just thought, well, if you don't know what you have today, how could you possibly know what is enough? And so I built a chatbot to ask her these questions. What did you like to do when you were 17 before you went to university? What are some things that you kept for 30 years, 40 years? And what are the meaning behind it? Or how many investment accounts do you have? Where are they? How do you think about them? How did you allocate them, if you allocated them at all, or is it just on autopilot?
Mm,
So, 4 months into having this conversation with a chatbot, what I realized was if I had the information about your assets and your relationships that are closest to you, I'm able to organize this information into a legal document. And so that's when Airlight was born. The idea that clarity is love in practical form.
mhm.
So we
Nice.
want we are on this mission to build tools to help people like my mother, just figure out what is important to her. Let's organize her things. What does she want to happen? Should she be in a coma and can't decide? These are all the legal documents we
Yeah.
help organize.
It's all
So
the
that's what
things that
HeirLight is
people
up to.
don't want to think about, but actually need to think about. Because I think if when you do pass on, if all your assets and all your financials and whatever are a complete mess, and you're leaving it to your dependents or your relatives to sort out in a time when it's already stressful. They don't want to be doing all of that. And if you had everything organized, it's like when my dad passed away. Before he did, he had everything organized completely. It was all in one place, in one drawer in his little study. And he went through with me and my sister, this is where everything is. This is where you find this. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm leaving. So we knew exactly what to do and where to find things when he did pass on. So he removed that stress from us, really, which was one of the kindest things he could have done as well, I think.
Wow. And I bet even then it felt overwhelming,
Mm,
even with things organized, right?
yeah, yeah.
it
So
was
just
it was
imagine
still
what it would have been
overwhelming.
if you're having to hunt for things. I remember a client of mine was telling me one time as well, when his mother passed on, they were hunting for things. They knew the documents were around somewhere, but they couldn't find them. Right. So that's even more stressful.
And it gets complicated when family disagree on how things should be
Mm,
handled,
mm,
right? It's just so unfortunate to that we have the tools out there. And this is something that, talk about copywriting. We've had this conversation before, which is it's not a tools or a resource or information challenge. It's really just inaction. So how do I write so beautifully that I can convince someone to do something so important to them?
yeah.
That's our
Yeah.
challenge.
Yes. Yes. It's to make people, I mean, and this is a particular thing where everybody knows they need to do it, but they don't want to face it. Right. There's that emotional thing of like denial, right? I don't want to face this. Right. So you're up against that block as well. But I think if you come
Yeah.
at it from the angle of it's the kindest thing you can do, right? To just imagine a situation where you've passed on and nobody can find the stuff. It's already stressful for them. So it's the kindest thing you can do to get your affairs in order.
Yeah,
So how does Airlight work exactly?
so HeirLight is a mobile app right now. And when I say right now is because we are committed to being a mobile app, but we are open to the needs of our users.
Right.
If we have enough data to show that people will only do this on a desktop app, then we'll build it.
Right.
So we are a mobile app. When you come into HeirLight, we will explain to you the few core components of what it takes to create a legal document. Actually, three legal documents. The will, which essentially for most countries is the document that says, who do you want to get all your things?
Mm,
The health directive in the US, this would be the document to say, who gets to decide what happens to your body if you
mm,
can't and while you're still
mm,
alive. And the third one is a financial power of attorney. Essentially, if you can't make decisions about your finances, who can do
mm,
that for you?
right.
So we ask our users these questions
Hmm.
and we learn about them. We explain things to them in just plain English. And whatever they tell us they want, we organize that into the document. So that's all
Hmm.
we're doing.
Mm. So is this on like, is it automated in terms of they put the stuff in and it automatically creates the file for them? Is that right?
So the conversation is the only piece that we're pushing back with the user to say, hey, if you want to do this, here's the other information you need to have. So we take that information, you have 5 watches that you want to give to your friends, but you want them to compete in a sushi eating contest to decide who gets the 5. So we're not going to tell you what's better or worse because we can't give you legal advice legally.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but we can help you organize that into a
Mm,
legally binding document at the end. So the template that we have is drafted by an attorney. We're simply using AI to do the conversation, to fill in all the
right.
gaps.
Okay. AI generated stuff. Okay. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. So, and then I believe you said this is only available in the US at the moment, right? Because of all the legal differences in different countries, right?
Yeah, going down this path, I realized that, in the US, all 50 states have slight different rules of these things.
No. Nightmare.
It, yeah, everywhere. Every province in Canada has a slight different rule. So it's pretty complicated. And I think this is why people put it off, right?
Yeah.
Not only it feels emotionally heavy, it
Mm,
feels expensive and also it
mm,
feels big. And so
mm,
we're trying to shift that conversation into it can actually be done fairly simply. You just have to answer one question at a time, right? And because we're an app, no one's judging you behind it.
right.
It's not a lawyer talking to you. And subconsciously you may be thinking, oh, maybe I'm 55. I should know what executor is. But because it's
Mm,
an app, there's no ego involved. And
yeah.
so you're able
Yeah.
to ask any stupid questions you want, and the app will just tell you as it is.
Yeah. There's no such thing as a stupid question, right? So how does it work in terms of payment then? Is it a one-time fee they pay for the service, or is it subscription based, or how does it work?
So it's free to start until the moment you're ready to export your documents. Currently it's 179 to export all three of the documents. And within the next year, you'll have this membership activated where you can randomly tell the app, hey, I just thought of a pair of shoes that I love and I wanted to go to my little brother. Also, please leave this note in it to say this were the pair of shoes that I wore to my first ballroom dancing competition, right? You leave all these meaning and these things. And in a year, whenever you update your will, we'll have all these things ready for you.
Right. Right. And also things like life stages as well. And people, they say when you get married, you should change your will, right? And different stages of your life, you're constantly having to make those changes because your life changes and your dependents change and things like that. So they could come back to it at a later time to make changes.
The good thing about this system is that it has perfect memory and it
Mm,
has perfect context as to who you are.
mhm,
And so
mm,
whenever you come in and if something is contradictory, it would just highlight. We
mm,
can't tell you what to do, but you get
mm.
to decide.
Right. So if I'm looking years into the future now, right? Say if someone does their will today, right? And maybe then 10 years later they get married, right? And have kids and they want to change their will, would they be able to go back in and the data would still be there?
Yeah. So the idea, we would hope that the user would keep the subscription going
Mm,
because at any time in the year, you can add notes to it. You can think of things. You can adjust it and re-export it as much as you want to, really.
right.
And so the way it would work is, typically when people get married, their will and their partner's will has a lot in common. And so, they can actually decide a lot of things and simply mirror it so
Hmm.
that they can give things to each other and figure out their personal preference inside of it. So these are all features that we're really excited to perfect as we get more user data. We're understanding what do people want, and we're talking to users of what is an insight or feature that they was not expecting to be very helpful for them, and we want to keep building that way.
So what kind of features have people been requesting that surprised you?
The biggest surprise I have for me so far is that I used to think that estate planning was a social economic thing where people with more will get it done, people with
Mm,
less will put it off.
mm,
But what I realize now with some users is that even people with more have put it off for years. And it isn't because they don't have the money or the connection to an attorney. It's
mhm.
just that they don't want to talk to a human and they just didn't want to do it. And so it shocked me that, yeah, it shocked me that we have users who came in from seeing a post that I did made on LinkedIn and went through all of it, created their will, pay for it, and never bothered us once. No customer support. They just want to get it done without talking to
Mm.
somebody. So yeah, I'm still,
So it's a
you
convenience,
think
really.
about like the ICP. You think about like this perfect avatar that I'm trying to talk to. This is really throwing me off because I thought it was a resource constraint, but it isn't. psychological constraint.
It is, yeah, it is. It's like you don't want to make that journey, as you say, to a lawyer, talking about things you don't know about. And then the perception is as well, this is going to get expensive, right? So
Yeah.
there's loads of reasons people don't do it. But I think also just denial of the fact that they're going to die. Right? People don't want to face that as well. So, and it depends what kind of person you are as to if you're a planner or you're not a planner. That's another thing as well. If you're someone who doesn't plan, the idea of making a will probably wouldn't enter their head very often. So it's dealing with that as well.
We're actually running a B2B strategy, more like a channel partnership strategy where we're having phone calls with funeral homes to see if we can get in front of people who are attending funerals.
Right.
Because the psychology is that they're thinking about this.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we want to capture them at a moment where if you're thinking about it, you can get it done maybe while you're waiting for the funeral to start. So yeah, we're playing
Okay. But
around with
yeah.
these things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, as you say, it's what different ways to getting in front of people when they're in the frame of mind to actually be ready to think about it as well. Yeah. So it's a lovely idea. It's wonderful what you're doing. So where can we send people to for them to be able to access HeirLight?
So if you just want to try it out, you can go to download.airlight, HeirLight.com, and it would just send you to whichever app store your phone has, so Google
Uh-huh.
or Apple.
Right.
So for now, as of this recording, we're only live in California, but we have Texas and Florida coming soon. So if you're curious, go ahead and just click California, but know that we're probably not going to let you export, if everything you have says a different state.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But as time moves on, if people come across this podcast in the future, there will probably be more and more states opened up and the possibility then. So just go and have a look and explore and see if this is something that you can actually use in your state, right? And would there be in the future any possibility to bring it worldwide? And I know
It
that's a
would have
huge
to
task.
be, yeah, it would have to be country to country
Yeah.
specific. Yeah. So this is something, with the speed of AI, our hurdle, what slows us down the most is when we need to index the template created by our attorneys to the AI
Hmm.
language because we want to make sure with every state that it's valid. And so right now, for example, I have lawyers from Florida, New York, Ohio, and Georgia reviewing our template and indexing to what the users give us. And so that's what's slowing us down. And also,
Yeah,
honestly, the cost of it is quite high to have these lawyers do that.
it will be. And then when
Yeah.
if you think of bringing that then country to country to country,
But I believe
so
I believe human psychology is fairly similar. There
mm,
are cultural differences. For example, in the Baha'i faith or the
yeah,
Islam faith, there
uh-huh,
there are certain things in the will that needs to be adjusted. So there
yeah,
are differences there. But
yeah,
I think humans naturally put off things that are important if it's scary.
yes,
And so if I can
yeah,
solve that, I think I can
yeah.
solve this for a lot of people.
That's nice. That's lovely. Okay, Jermaine, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's a pleasure to speak to you. And it's very inspiring as well to speak to someone who has shown throughout their life an entrepreneurial spirit. And I think that gives a lot of inspiration to the listeners as well. So I wish you all the best with your app as it develops as well. And thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to the show today. And if you've liked what you've heard, then do subscribe to the channel wherever you see it, wherever you're watching it. And if you're on YouTube, ring the bell so that you can get notified when we upload another episode so you don't miss the episodes as they come up.